Talking to someone who doesn't like you can feel uncomfortable before the conversation even begins. Your body tightens. Your mind prepares defenses. You rehearse explanations you haven't been asked for, and without realizing it, you enter the conversation already giving them power. The goal is not to change how they feel about you. The goal is to communicate clearly without shrinking or escalating. You don't need someone's approval to speak with confidence. Confidence comes from knowing your message, not from predicting their reaction. When you rely on approval, your words soften, your tone hesitates, and your message becomes unclear. Dislike doesn't remove your right to speak. It simply requires you to be more grounded in yourself. Staying neutral is essential. Dislike often invites mirroring, defensiveness, sarcasm, tension. When you mirror their energy, you validate it. Neutrality interrupts the pattern. You don't match their tone. You don't compete emotionally. You speak calmly, slowly, and directly. That steadiness shifts the dynamic. It reminds both of you that this is a conversation, not a battle. Clarity matters more than charm when respect is missing. Trying to be likable in an unfriendly environment usually backfires. It looks uncertain. It invites dismissal. Clear communication, on the other hand, commands attention without force. You state what you need. You ask what you need to ask. You avoid unnecessary explanations. Clear statements reduce openings for misinterpretation or manipulation. Your tone is doing more work than your words. A calm tone signals self-control. A steady pace signals confidence. You don't rush. You don't fill silence. Silence is not awkward when it's intentional. It creates space. It places responsibility back on the other person. Tone controls outcome because it determines whether the conversation escalates or settles. Speak to be understood, not accepted. Acceptance is outside your control. Understanding is not. You focus on accuracy, not persuasion. You communicate once, clearly. If they choose not to receive it, that's information. You don't argue with resistance. You note it and move accordingly. Dislike loses power when you stop reacting to it. You don't prove yourself. You don't overcompensate. You don't apologize for existing. You remain present, respectful, and firm. That posture protects your dignity regardless of the outcome. This approach doesn't guarantee harmony, but it guarantees self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of every strong interaction. You don't need anyone's approval to speak with confidence, but many people behave as if they do. The moment you believe someone must like you before you can speak freely, you give them power over your voice. Your words begin to depend on their mood. Your tone adjusts to avoid discomfort. Your message becomes smaller, safer, and less direct. Confidence disappears not because you lack it, but because you've placed it in someone else's hands. Approval is unstable. Confidence cannot be built on something you don't control. Confidence comes from clarity, not permission. When you know what you want to say and why you're saying it, your voice steadies. The problem starts when your focus shifts from the message to the reaction. You start predicting how they'll respond. You imagine rejection. You prepare explanations before you're asked. All of that happens before a single word is spoken, and it weakens your presence. Speaking with confidence means anchoring yourself to your intent, not to their approval. Dislike does not disqualify you. Someone's opinion of you does not reduce the validity of your thoughts, needs, or boundaries. Yet many people subconsciously behave as if it does. They soften truths around those who seem uninterested or hostile. They delay conversations. They avoid eye contact. They try to win favor first, believing confidence will come after acceptance. It doesn't. Confidence precedes acceptance. It often creates it. When you stop seeking approval, your body language changes. You stand still instead of shifting. You breathe instead of rushing. You pause instead of filling silence. These small changes communicate certainty. People sense when you're speaking from self-trust instead of self-doubt. Even those who don't like you notice the difference. They may not agree, but they listen more carefully. Approval seeking invites compromise of self. You say things you don't fully mean. You leave things unsaid. You agree when you don't agree. Over time, this creates internal tension. You walk away from conversations frustrated not because of how they treated you, but because you abandoned your own voice. Confidence erodes every time you silence yourself for comfort. Speaking with confidence does not require aggression or dominance. It requires alignment. Your words match your values. Your tone matches your intent. You don't perform confidence, you embody it by being consistent. Consistency builds credibility. Credibility builds respect. Respect does not require approval. There's a quiet authority in speaking without needing validation. You don't scan faces for reactions. You don't adjust mid-sentence. You deliver your message calmly and allow it to land however it lands. This detachment is not indifference. It is emotional discipline. You care about communication, not control. When someone doesn't like you, it's tempting to over-explain in an effort to be understood. Over-explaining often signals insecurity. It tells the listener you're open to negotiation about your own position. Clear, concise statements communicate confidence because they leave little room for doubt. You don't need to defend your right to speak, you simply speak. Confidence also means accepting that not every conversation will go well. Some people will remain closed. Some will misinterpret you. Some will never change their opinion. That outcome does not define your worth or your ability to communicate effectively. Confidence remains intact when it's not tied to results. The more you practice speaking without seeking approval, the easier it becomes. Your nervous system learns that you can survive discomfort. Your mind learns that silence doesn't equal rejection. Your voice learns that it doesn't need permission. Over time, this becomes your default state. You show up grounded. You speak clearly. You leave conversations with self-respect intact. When approval is no longer the goal, confidence becomes stable. It's no longer influenced by who's listening or how they feel about you. It comes from knowing that your voice matters because you exist, not because someone agrees. Staying neutral when someone clearly doesn't like you is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Dislike has a way of pulling people into reaction mode. A sharp tone invites defensiveness. A cold look invites withdrawal. A dismissive comment invites sarcasm. And before you know it, you're no longer responding intentionally. You're mirroring their energy. That mirroring may feel justified in the moment, but it hands control to the other person. Neutrality takes that control back. When you mirror someone's dislike, you validate it. You confirm the tension. You escalate the emotional temperature of the interaction. Neutrality interrupts that cycle. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine or suppressing your feelings. It means choosing not to let their emotional state dictate yours. You remain steady while they fluctuate. That steadiness is what shifts the dynamic. Dislike often thrives on reaction. Some people consciously or unconsciously test others to see how much influence they have. When they sense irritation, insecurity, or defensiveness, they push further. Neutrality removes the reward. There's nothing to push against. No emotional feedback loop to exploit. Calm presence becomes a boundary without needing to announce itself. Staying neutral requires awareness. You notice the urge to match their tone, to sharpen your words, or to pull back entirely. Instead of acting on that impulse, you pause. That pause is not hesitation, it's discipline. It allows you to choose a response aligned with your values rather than your emotions. Neutrality also protects your credibility. Emotional reactions shift the focus away from your message and onto your behavior. Once the conversation becomes about tone or attitude, clarity is lost. Neutral communication keeps the focus on substance. You speak plainly. You ask direct questions. You avoid loaded language. This makes it harder for the other person to derail the interaction. Many people confuse neutrality with weakness. In reality, neutrality requires strength. It takes confidence to remain composed when someone is openly dismissive. It takes self-trust to not defend your ego in real time. The strongest communicators are not the loudest or most expressive. They are the most controlled. Staying neutral also gives you information. When you don't react emotionally, you can observe more clearly. You notice patterns. You see whether the person softens, escalates, or disengages. This information helps you decide how much access they deserve moving forward. Reacting emotionally clouds that judgment. Neutrality is not silence. It's intentional engagement. You still speak. You still set boundaries. You still state your needs. You simply do so without emotional charge. That lack of charge often disarms hostility. It forces the other person to either calm down or stand alone in their negativity. When you don't mirror dislike, you also protect your own nervous system. Emotional mirroring keeps your body in a heightened state of stress. Neutrality allows you to remain regulated. You leave the interaction less drained, less resentful, and more grounded. Over time, neutrality becomes your default. You stop taking things personally. You stop reacting to subtle digs or dismissive tones. You recognize that someone's dislike says more about them than about you. This perspective creates emotional distance without disconnection. Staying neutral doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect indefinitely. It means you don't let disrespect control you in the moment. You remain composed, then you choose next steps from a place of clarity rather than emotion. That is how you keep your power when faced with dislike. When respect is missing, charm becomes ineffective. Charm relies on goodwill. It assumes openness, curiosity, and a basic level of mutual regard. Without respect, charm feels misplaced. It can come across as insecurity, overcompensation, or an attempt to win favor rather than communicate. Purpose. Clarity, on the other hand, does not depend on warmth or approval. It stands on precision, intention, and calm authority. In difficult interactions, clarity does more than smooth things over. It establishes ground. People often reach for charm when they sense tension. They smile more, soften their words, add humor, or try to be agreeable in hopes of easing the situation. While this can work in friendly environments, it fails where respect is lacking. Charm without respect invites dismissal. It signals uncertainty. It tells the other person you're negotiating your position instead of owning it. Clarity removes that uncertainty. Clear communication states what matters without dressing it up. It doesn't perform. It doesn't persuade emotionally. It informs. When you speak clearly, you reduce ambiguity. You say what you mean what you say, and you stop there. That decisiveness commands attention, even from those who don't like you. When respect is missing, people listen less to how you feel and more to how grounded you are. Clarity signals grounding. You don't rush. You don't fill silence. You don't hedge your words. You use simple language, short sentences, direct points. This doesn't make you harsh. It makes you unmistakable. Charm often blurs boundaries. It tries to keep things light at the expense of truth. Clarity draws boundaries naturally. It defines what you will do, what you won't do, and what you expect. Boundaries delivered with clarity feel firm but fair. They don't invite debate. They set direction. Another danger of charm in low-respect situations is that it shifts power away from you. You become the one seeking acceptance. The other person becomes the judge. Clarity rebalances that dynamic. You are not asking to be understood. You are stating your position. Understanding becomes optional. Respect becomes the byproduct. Clarity also protects you from manipulation. Vague language can be twisted. Emotional language can be exploited. Clear statements leave little room for reinterpretation. They anchor the conversation. They limit side paths. They keep the exchange focused. Speaking with clarity requires self-trust. You trust that your message stands on its own. You trust that you don't need to be liked to be heard. This trust is felt in your tone and posture. People respond to it instinctively. Even when they resist, they recognize it. When respect is missing, clarity also helps you exit conversations cleanly. You don't linger trying to repair impressions. You don't chase understanding. You state what needed to be said and allow the interaction to end. This preserves your dignity and energy. Clarity is not cold. It is considerate without being submissive. It acknowledges reality without dramatizing it. It allows you to communicate effectively regardless of how the other person feels about you. And in situations where charm would fail, clarity becomes your strongest asset. Tone is the silent driver of every conversation. Long before your words are fully processed, your tone has already shaped how they land. People may forget the exact phrasing you used, but they will remember how it felt to hear you speak. When you control your tone, you control the emotional direction of the interaction. When you don't, the conversation controls you. Tone signals safety or threat. A rushed voice suggests anxiety. A sharp edge suggests aggression. A hesitant tone suggests uncertainty. None of these require a single disrespectful word to change the outcome of a conversation. This is why tone matters more than logic in tense situations. People respond emotionally first, intellectually second. When you're speaking to someone who doesn't like you, tone becomes even more important. They are already listening for reasons to dismiss you. Any hint of defensiveness, sarcasm, or frustration gives them that reason. A calm, even tone removes it. It forces them to deal with the content rather than your delivery. Controlling your tone starts with your body. Breathing slower lowers your vocal pitch. Slowing your pace communicates confidence. Pausing before you respond prevents emotional leakage. These small adjustments send a powerful message. You are composed, and you are in control. That composure often de-escalates tension without needing to address it directly. Tone also determines whether a conversation escalates or stabilizes. Two people can say the same words and